been in the real estate business for a number of years, and one of the things that comes up is a discussion on what the difference is between a house and a home. So when does a house become a home? It's the Real Estate Show. Welcome to the Real Estate Show. My name is Rick Naples. I am the owner-broker of Zone Realty LLC. You zone your home. I've been a realtor now for just under 20 years, and I've seen different markets over all of these years. You know, I was there when the markets were hot. I've seen the markets get cold. I survived through the COVID disaster and all the challenges that brought to the real estate market. And I've always felt that I've tried to navigate the difficult lines of real estate in the markets through the years and survive it, as well as providing the ultimate in service to my clients. Now, one of the things that has really impressed me over all of these years in business is the concept of a house compared to a home. Now, let's talk a little bit about definitions. You're a buyer, you're going to buy a house. You're a seller, you're going to sell your house. Okay, so what is a house? Well, a house basically is a building or a habitat. It's a place where families or an individual might live. It's a building, as I said. You know, it's made of bricks and mortar or concrete or whatever materials might be used. It could be a rudimentary hut. It can be a very complex building. But it's a building. It's a thing. That's just what it is. It's something that houses something. When you think of a home, it's a kind of different type of thought. A home is more of a, I guess describe it kind of a feeling. Home means a lot to different people, and it means different things. Home can be a simple familiarity of an area or a simple building that someone has grown up in. It has an overall emotional effect. When a buyer finds a house to buy, they're buying the house as a product. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. The house is a building, and it has to fit their particular needs for whatever their life situation is going to be. It has to have the right number of bedrooms and bathrooms, maybe the location, and so on and so forth, but also has to fit within their affordable budget. In other words, they've got to be able to afford the house, obviously, to be able to buy it. But it is just that. It's a house. So when does that house that a buyer purchases or that a seller sells become an actual home? Well, there's a lot of different articles out there that talk about that concept and when it happens and how it happens. And there's some interesting monumental points, you might say, that you have to reach in order to make the house that you purchased into a home. And I'm going to talk about those here on the Real Estate Show. The first thing that's interesting about making a house a home is turning it into something that you can call your own. Now, obviously, unless you're building brand new construction, you're going to buy a house that someone else has had as their home. They have taken that house and they have turned it into more than just a building. They've turned it into their habitat. They've customized it. They've done things to the home that fit their lifestyle as far as its colors, its decorations, the way the rooms are arranged, and so on and so forth. So when a buyer first comes into a house to look at it, they don't feel like it's a home. They basically are looking at a house. It's someone else's home, not their home. So one of the challenges that we always have as realtors is talking to the seller to help them make their home feel like a house that a buyer would like to buy. Let's look at this first presentation talking about a house versus a home, and I'll be back to talk a little bit more in depth about this particular concept. Houses can be very generic. They can be pretty much cookie cutter. They can look kind of all the same as far as their style is concerned. I mean, most of us out there, whether you're a realtor or not, know the difference between a colonial home and a raised ranch. Sometimes houses are a little bit confusing because you don't know if the house is actually a colonial style home or a Cape Cod, or is it something contemporary? And this could be because of the different styles and shapes and square footage of the way the house has been put together. But that's just it. It's a building. Drive down any street in any town and you'll see a lot of houses. And they all have individuality. You can see what the owners have done as far as changing the colors, what they've done for landscaping, whether the house has amenities like a swimming pool in the backyard or a two-car garage or a storage shed out in the yard. There's a lot of different things that can make houses different from one another. But then there's areas that you can drive into that have been established for a number of years. And as you go through those areas, you can see that those houses were pretty much the same floor plan, what I call cookie cutter houses. In other words, it's a whole area of single floor ranches, or maybe the old style Cape Cods, you know, the ones with the 2 bedrooms upstairs and the 1 bedroom downstairs type style. But they pretty much look all the same, except for those little individual changes that the present owner has made to the house. It's a building. It's there for someone to hopefully live in. It's not necessarily a home or your home. You don't know if the house is an actual home until you get into the house. And what I mean by that is when you go over, let's say, a friend's house and you walk in there, you start to get the feeling that this house is now a home. And I'm playing a lot on the words here, house and home. What is that feeling of a home? Well, that feeling, as I said earlier, is a familiarity of the space to one is living in. In other words, they have customized or changed that house to fit their particular needs. And you know it's someone's home because you see a lot of personalization. You always feel like a guest when you're shopping for a house, unless the house is a vacant home or brand new construction. You always feel that you're a guest, that you're going into someone's home, that you're kind of imposing on their privacy by entering their house, because it's not a house, it's a home. It's hard to see a house as your home when somebody else's stuff is in it. In other words, they've put things up that belong to them. The furniture belongs to the seller of the home. You see pictures on the wall. You see artwork on the wall. You're basically walking through the way someone else has decorated the home. So as a buyer, sometimes it makes it difficult for you to see this house as a potential to make your home in the future. So as a realtor, a lot of times when we're sitting down with a seller and we're going through their house or their home, we start talking about ways to make that house feel more like just that, a house. Because you see, there's an interesting concept. When you own a home and you decide you want to sell it, that home now becomes a house. And there's a big difference, because a house is a generic layout. It's something that someone can walk into and start to imagine the things that they might do to turn that house into a home. Let's look at this presentation. I'll be back to talk a little bit more about that whole idea. I'm talking here on the Real Estate Show about the concept of a house becoming a home, or a home going back to a house when it comes up for sale. There's a couple of articles that I read that pointed out some interesting things. And first of all, there's the standards. You know, every realtor is going to tell the seller that there's 2 or 3 different things you need to do when you're putting your house on the market. They're going to talk about depersonalizing the home. In other words, taking all your personal collections or personal taste artwork, sometimes bigger furniture, or different things that you've used to decorate the house, and pack them up and get them ready for storage because you're going to be moving. They're going to talk about decluttering the house. In other words, quite honestly, we all have a lot of stuff, and there's stuff all over the place, right? You open up your closets, and there's stuff in the closet, and there's stuff on the kitchen counters, and there's stuff on the dining room table, and there's just things everywhere. And they're going to talk about how to pick that up and clean it up to be able to make a buyer visualize their own stuff on those things. They're going to talk about clearing the kitchen countertops so that a buyer can see the space of the kitchen countertops and not be influenced by, the toaster and the coffee pot and the hot air fryer and whatever else you might have out on the counter for your daily use. They're going to talk about furniture and the placement of the furniture so that you have an easy way to move around the house so that the buyers can see the room and appreciate the size and the flexibility of the room as far as how they might imprint their own decorations on it. And they're also going to talk about how to set up the house for the approach. I've talked about here on the Real Estate Show many times that when a buyer goes into a house for sale and it's someone's home, the first 15 minutes that they're in that house are going to make their buying decision. So you don't want to have anything that's in there that's distracting. And I've told over the years, the many years that I've done the Real Estate Show, several stories of some of the distractions that I've found when I've gone into homes that are now trying to be sold as a house. Especially when it comes to, as I mentioned earlier, personal items. Sometimes if it's a larger home, you may have a owner who is well-traveled, who's had the ability to go around the world and have certain collections of different types of art. Well, again, collections, that's a whole nother subject because, again, your realtor, when they come into a home to list it for sale, they'll talk about personal collections. And they'll also give you a little bit of a speech about safety, things to do as far as just securing the home because you're going to have strangers coming through it. And all those things are very important. I think the hardest concept, though, is to realize that the home you live in now becomes a product. It's a product for sale. And you need to do certain things in order to make that product appealing to the widest range of potential buyers who come to see that home. A house, a home, a habitat, a dwelling, the place you live. These are all interesting concepts. A house is basically, as I've said, a building. And a home is a feeling, a place that you abide, a place that's your own, a place that you feel safe, a place that you can be yourself. Now, does a building, a house, have to be your home? Well, some people are creative. There are people that live in RVs and travel around the country, and the RV is their home. There are folks that are, adventurers and travelers, and they have no specific place that they call a home, but they have a habitat that travels with them. That is their housing, you might say. There are those of us that travel, that go to hotels. Is a hotel a home? No, it's a place that you rent, that you habitat for a short period of time, but it's not really your home. There are other things out there that you might call a place to stay or a place to live or a place to be that aren't necessarily your home. We take home with us, though, everywhere we go. And we have that feeling of home when we get back to where we originated from. Many of us move around. Some people start off in one place and they end up in another place, or they move to another place. But usually the place to where you were born or where you grew up will always have that special feeling of feeling like home. And you always bring a piece of that in your heart no matter where you go. Houses, homes. Let's take a look at this presentation, and I'll be back with some final comments about a house versus a home. if there's anybody keeping count out there, I'm talking about houses versus a home, and that kind of concept of the difference between the two. And I've mentioned those two words a lot during this show because they're very important. When you're having a conversation with someone and you're talking about where you live, you're referring to your home. Or if you're filling out some forms or you're filling out an application for something, you're going to put the street address of your house. You're not putting down your personal collections and your personal decorations and so on and so forth, unless you're applying for an insurance policy to cover that stuff. But again, there's an interesting way of looking at the building as far as whether it is just a house or if it is a home. Now, one of the things that buyers will do is when they come into a house, they're going to imprint their own visions on that house to make it into something they want to live in. Now, how long does it take, on average, when someone buys a house for them to have the feeling that that house is now truly their home? I read an interesting article, and it basically stated that it takes a little over 17 months and some change in order to do that. And this is because it takes a while for you to kind of, I guess, cover up or redo and get rid of all of the indications of the previous owner. So it's an interesting concept. Remember that as you go out as a buyer and as you're a seller that's looking to sell something, you're looking at a house. You're looking at a building. It's not going to become a home until you have the chance as a seller to depersonalize it, and the buyer has a chance, should they choose to purchase it, to imprint their own decorations, their own ownership, to make that house a home. My name is Rick Naples, and this has been The Real Estate Show. I thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.
The Saybrook Fish House in Canton has been serving fresh seafood, chicken, and steak entrees for 34 years, offering 3 cozy dining room settings, a newly renovated pub with craft beer, wine by the glass, specialty cocktails, and a lighter fare menu. Open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week. Reservations accepted for parties of 2 to 42, and gift certificates are also available. The Saybrook Fish House, nestled at the crossroads of Route 44, 202, and 179 in Canton.